Hey guys, this is Ashley White, the owner of the Polka Dot Alley, and I'm so excited to introduce you to the Alley podcast. Hey guys, okay, so for this chapter, we're going to talk a little bit about specifically change and kind of knowing how and knowing when to pivot, whether it be in business or in life. That has been something that I have had to do numerous times. So I feel like I'm a bit of an expert at this point to talk on this topic. And so I loved that somebody did ask when we asked what you guys wanted to hear about. There was someone that I think had said something about, you know, being able to effectively kind of move through changes and things of that nature. And I want to honestly say that I truly do feel that one of the reasons that we have been as successful as we have been is because we on a dime will pivot and change as needed. In this industry, especially, I feel like in most any industry, you're going to have change. And year by year, month by month, minute by minute, sometimes there are things that change. Technology as one thing is always changing, as we all know. So every other time you turn around, there's a new app or there's a new way of doing things, and you have to kind of be able to just be ready and be prepared for whatever the next thing is. You almost have to kind of be able to predict ahead of time, and the minute it pops up, you have to do it. And that's something that I know a lot of people have a hard time doing. I actually yesterday had a meeting with the CEO of Comment Sold, which is what we use for our website and our app. And whenever he and I were meeting, one of the things that he talked about at first, and it was really nice, but one of the reasons he wanted to meet with me, he said he feels like there's an actual word for it. And he said that basically the more successful someone is, usually they have the hardest time changing. And they want to do things the way that they've always done it. They want to do things the way they're used to doing it. And even if you show them actual data, you show them facts where, hey, this is a better way of doing it, or the way that you were doing it is wrong. Even though they have this, you know, you can't deny that this maybe would be a better way. They always go back to the way that they were doing it. They always think, yeah, but this is easier or this is better. And I can totally see his point on that. And he was saying that I'm not like that, which I appreciate. But I could see his point on that because it is really hard to get out of whatever your habit is, whether it's in work or home or whatever. But you get to where you're so used to doing something one way, and maybe you have been successful at it. So it's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to switch this up, because sometimes that's a big risk, and hoping that maybe you get a bigger reward, but you're going to have to go through this phase of wait and see kind of what happens. And so I think it is a really hard kind of thing to grasp and to do. And I don't know that had I not had things thrown my way that forced me to kind of pivot and change over the years, that I'd be as good at that. But I do think not being a planner helps me in that way. You know, we laughed about that in the last episode, talking with Stevie, that she's such a planner and scheduler, and I'm not that way at all. And I think that does allow me to kind of just go with the flow and change as we go on. So in business specifically, looking at kind of different changes I've had everything from, we were doing really, really well in 2014, as I've talked about before. And I was building my first home. I was pregnant with my second child. We decided to open a storefront because if you don't know me, that's another thing you'll find out. I am very like, pile on 50 things at once. I'll be fine. We'll figure it out. It's going to be okay. I can handle the pressure. We're good. And so we were doing all of those things at one time. I'll do an entire chapter about my beloved Harrison because he deserves his own chapter. But my second child, he was born with multiple unknown birth defects that we did not know he was going to have. We were not prepared for that. I went in for a scheduled repeat C-section at 39 weeks. My store had been open for 2 weeks at this point, and we were in a really big growth phase at PDA on the online side, trying to grow and kind of get that going even more, and as well as running the storefront. And he was born unable to breathe. So he ended up being in the NICU for about 6 weeks. I was up there, as you know, any of you that are NICU parents, but all day, every day. And I also had a 2-year-old at home. So I was so torn between being with him, being with her, and all of that. So that was my first thing I think that happened that really, I was 7 years into my business. And that was a huge change. Obviously having my first child, you had other things, but this was something that was huge. It was monumental. And it could have completely broken my business. And temporarily, for a little bit, it kind of did. I just didn't care. I was depressed. I was scared. I wasn't happy. And it was really hard to kind of keep that momentum. And so I think what's important to realize is I never quit. So during that time, I knew I don't care right now. Like, I don't care about online sales. I don't care if we're growing. This is my priority. I need to be with him. But I still have this other thing, and I still have this job, and I still have to pay the bills, and I still have this passion, and I've signed this lease for 5 years. So until he is 5, I will have this going. So I have to get up and I have to keep it going to some level. And so it was changing and going, okay, what can work for me? Because at that point, I was so involved in what was the day to day. I was so involved in the selling and everything. And so I had to, that was honestly my first time, I think, when I really started delegating to other employees and I started bringing in a lot more staff because I could not physically be there and I had somewhere else I had to be emotionally, mentally, physically. And so I realized this is what we have to do to keep it open. And I think that's something that is huge when you are especially a business owner, is that you have to be able to adjust and adapt, adjust and adapt, adjust and adapt always. And I feel like if you sit there and you just kick and scream and fight every little bump along the way, you're not going to go very far. You've got to realize that when you hit the bump, what's the detour? Figure it out. Get over the bump, get around the bump. Someday you're going to be okay again. And someday you're going to need, to keep that job going or whatever it might be. And so how do I make it work right now? Like, how do I, in the interim, figure it out? So that was my first one for sure that really kind of changed the game. The next one would absolutely have been COVID. COVID was a huge one for anyone that had a, storefront, face-to-face restaurant. I'm sure any of those kind of places. And so when that happened, luckily we were already online and we had a good business online. But we knew that was when we needed to really start pushing online. I knew that I really wanted to be live. I wanted to be in front of people because I knew that they needed that human interaction. They needed to have something to watch and someone to see. And I'm really thankful that we just kind of quickly did that and jumped on there and made sure that we were in their face and we were talking to them and giving them kind of an outlet and an escape. And yes, I was bummed that the storefront had to temporarily close and we weren't able to have customers come in, and we were still paying rent for that, but we couldn't run the store. There were so many negatives that I feel like it was stressful and it could have completely tore us down, but it was like, okay, what can we do? What can we do to build this up? And on top of, Harrison and COVID, guys, there have been so many things in the 17 years of me doing this that you wouldn't even believe. I mean, there have been years where we were down to, I honest to God, don't know how I'm going to buy one more pack of a shirt to sell. We don't have the money to even buy new inventory for these people. So what am I supposed to do? And if I have one more big sale, they're going to think that we're going out of business or something. I've had employees that have stolen from me. I've had multiple employees that have, lied and gone and started their own thing while they were working for me. I've had people work for me go and try to take customers and message them to go to them. Literally so many things that have happened that could have completely just taken me down, and things that have embarrassed me, things that have been a struggle. It has not been easy. It's not like for 17 years we've just flourished and it's always been amazing. And every day I've just been, proud and happy. No, there have been a million tears shed. There have been so many sleepless nights. I remember there being 2 specific years where we struggled so bad to make sure that rent was paid and that paychecks were paid. And I didn't know that it would continue on to the next year. I remember James even talking to me about coming and working at his agency for him. And I was like, no, we are going to do this and we are going to make it. And looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so glad that we went through those and we learned from it, because now I feel so confident in knowing that, number one thing that COVID taught me is we never know. Like, you never know. You never know what is going to happen. We can all day long be like, well, people always need clothes. People are always going to shop, and the internet's never going to go away. I think in the last year, we have lost Facebook at least 3 times for an hour or whatever it might be. It's usually not long, but it's just enough to give you a panic attack when that's your bread and butter, you know? And so between things like that happening in COVID, which we all, I think, can agree we would have never seen as something possible of happening, I've learned that never say never. You never know what can happen. We never know what could change on a dime. And I feel like you have to be ready whatever the next day brings, whatever is going to happen. So for me, it's don't panic. So when something bad happens, don't panic. Think of everything bad that's happened before. Did you make it through that? The years that we didn't know how we were going to pay rent, the years where I was mortified or devastated over something with a long-term employee, or something happened that all the customers saw and they knew about, or me having a son who had to fight for his life for the first year and a half of his life. And he made it through. I just try to think back, and hey, you know what? Even the things that didn't work out, um, this last year, honestly, the last 2 years, I spent really taking care a lot of my dad. That was a big part of why we moved here. He just was not doing well medically, and he needed more help. And I wanted to be able to spend more time with him. And with my sisters that were all living here and my brother, Katie had a bunch of kiddos at home with her. It wasn't easy for her to be able to pop over. My other siblings had, 9 to 5 jobs. And that was something where I could be flexible and I could go over and take him somewhere or sit with him or be at the hospital with him or whatever. And it took a lot of my time, especially over this last year. And I remember over the holidays, that's a really busy time for us, So Black Friday, obviously, holidays is a busy time. And that's when we were kind of starting to lose him this year. So November is when he started, to be just really sick and worse. And then throughout the holidays until we lost him February 11th, I was up there almost every day. And I was having to come up here and work when I could, and then be with him whenever I could. And it's like, that's my point though, is those things that didn't work out the way that I want. Yes, Harrison's okay and business is okay. I still lost him, but I can still learn from that. And I can still take away and know that I will smile again, and I'll be okay again. And it's devastating. And I have days, I think it was night before last night, James walked in and he looked over at me and I was crying. And I had just pulled up a picture and I was just looking at my dad and I was watching videos and I was taking a moment to be sad. But that's okay, because sometimes I want those moments, and sometimes you do have those moments, whether it's something with work or financial or, whatever it might be. Lately for me too, a lot it's been the kids, just those struggles of, am I making the right choice? Whether it's, do I let them do this sport or go into this certain class, or maybe they have a friend they want to have a sleepover with and you're having a hard time with, is this the right friendship? Do I want this for them? When is it too soon to get her the cell phone? And oh my gosh, guys, we could do a whole episode on all that kind of stuff, parenting for sure. But I feel like I go through all of those things too. Work, family, my, loss, like my dad, and it all affects you in different ways, but it all still comes down to change and how you process the change. I just think every little thing every day is a new opportunity to go, okay, like what am I going to do better, or what am I going to do different, or how am I going to learn from this, or how are we going to kind of like pivot through this? And especially when you own your own business, that's such a huge part of it. So for me, I just try to always remember I've been through hell and back multiple times. We didn't even talk about the house burning down. Add to that, our house burned down. We lost everything. There have been so many days where I was like, this is it. I can't ever go to work again. I'm never going to do this again because I don't care about anything, because I'm just devastated and nothing else matters. But I always come back around. You'll always come back around. There's always a rainbow on the other side of that storm. There's always a way to get through it. But I feel like it really does. And let me tell you this too. You don't have to be positive to do that. I think that's such a big misconception, that you have to be a positive person. You have to always have positive thoughts in order to be able to overcome or get through something. I don't think that's true. I think you could totally be a negative Nellie if you want. You can be an Eeyore and still be successful and still get through the mountain. I think you just have to be determined. So forget positivity. Forget feeling like you have to be. I'm not a walking rainbow, okay? I'm just not always walking around like a joyful, Kim. I wish I was. I'm not. but I'm determined and I'm driven and I'm confident in knowing that whatever it is, I mean, I don't want the hard stuff. I'm a human being. I want it to all be cake. I don't want to go through any of the hard stuff. Um, but I'm also a rational enough person to know that it's going to come and that it's going to come again. You know what I mean? There will be another time, I'm sure, where we'll take a hit sales wise or financially, or something else will happen. God forbid, something, hopefully nothing as bad as what we've had medically or loss, but something will happen. It's life, and that's just kind of how it goes. And so I think you just have to kind of, in the back of your mind, I'm not a doomsday prepper. I'm not over here worrying and planning for the next thing. I think I'm just making sure that I always stay aware that something might happen and that it's okay. And I have to know that I'm going to work through it. At this point, for me, business wise, 17 years in, not only do we have a lease and we have staff and we have everybody here, but we've got a really big customer base too. And I feel like I have I don't want to say, a debt or that I owe anyone anything. But I do feel like I am far enough in now. There's nothing else I would want to do, and I can't imagine doing anything else. And this is my career at this point, and I'm going to make it work no matter what. And if that means I have to get on TikTok and do a crazy dance, unfortunately, that means I have to get on TikTok and do a crazy dance. If that means live selling, I think somebody asked recently and the podcast topic options about us doing live selling. There are a lot of boutiques I know that maybe don't like going live. That's not their thing. Listen, I don't love it all the time. I like making money. I like paying the bills. I like keeping the lights on. There is nothing, and let me be very clear on this if you're a boutique owner. There is nothing, in my opinion, that is going to get you the sales the way that a live does unless you have got a very, very large ad budget and or customer base on your app or website or something of that. If you are Revolve, if you are doing really big numbers on your website, you've got a great ad campaign, things like that. Absolutely, yes, you can do huge numbers without doing lives. I'm talking a little bit more of those of us that have started out smaller in the boutique industry. When you have the option of reaching people on a live compared to what you're doing on your website day to day or something like that, maybe without an ad budget, it just is not comparable. The amount of people that pop on a live and see a live, not only the amount of people I don't think that you see, but I think the loyalty and the relational aspect of it that come in is huge. I've even noticed, honestly, a lot of my wholesale vendors have started doing more lives, and it's genius. And they need to all be doing more of it if they aren't, because I do feel like over the years, one of the things I've learned is I buy more from those that I have relationships with. And I know you guys are the same. And so a lot of you at this point do know me. And if you don't know me, you feel like you know me. And I've said your name in a live and I know who you are. And even if I don't, you still feel like you know me. And I think there's something to be said for not only the loyalty to wanting to support me, but the trust that you have in me. You know I'm a real person. You know that I can vouch for something. You see all sides of us here, so you know what we're doing. So, do I want to go live? Multiple nights a week whenever kids are at baseball or something else? Sometimes no. Sometimes I love it. Sometimes I don't want to do it. But I force myself. And that's a big part of being, I feel like, just in general, a responsible business owner, is that you have to push yourself and you have to be willing to work when you don't want to work. Otherwise, you're going to fail. If I never work like today, right now, guys, I am slammed. I'm leaving town in 2 days. I have to pack for 3 kids and myself. I still have to get my nails done. I have a hair appointment tomorrow. I'm live tomorrow night. The list goes on. But guess what? I'm here. I'm sitting here and I'm doing this because I'm committed to this. This is my job. This is what I do. And so I think that's a whole other, I always say these are other episodes, but that really is another one, that there are so many people that own businesses or they want to grow their business because they want to work for themselves, but they don't understand that you work a lot more hours than somebody that probably doesn't own their own business. And so you have to be willing to work on the days you don't want to work or you don't have time to work. You have to be willing to pivot and change as things change. In this industry, that means you're going live, even if you don't want to go live. That means that you have to go on TikTok, even if you don't want TikTok, because that's where the people are right now. I'm not an Instagram person. And guess what? I'm finding out I've got to do a little bit more on Instagram. So it's all about going, okay, what do we need to do? I think also a big part of learning how to adapt and change not even in business, in life, and being able to successfully handle change is letting go of pride. I think pride can ruin everything. I think pride can ruin relationships. I think it can ruin businesses. I think it friendships. It can just ruin a person in general. And I'm not too prideful. I have no problem saying if I'm wrong in something, I'm wrong often, and I'll say, "Oh, my bad," and take that and learn from it. And I think that a big part of what I do is knowing that I'm not going to always be right, and I'm going to make some bad choices. And sometimes you're going to invest in a product or a brand, or sometimes you're going to have this great big idea that just doesn't end up coming to fruition, or maybe even you have something that comes in that we had in our old building. It would rain and it would flood. We lost $5,000 of merchandise just a couple months ago because it rained and we had told the landlord and they still didn't fix it. And it ruined a bunch of merchandise. And I, of course, immediately went to my husband, who's my insurance agent. I'm like, okay, can we file a claim? But then there's the deductible, yada, yada. So we didn't do it. And it's like, that day, I remember being like, oh, that sucks. I could have been bummed. I could have let it kill me. And listen, I'm aware that obviously there's a difference between someone starting out where that could completely crush them financially and us, it wasn't. So I'm not, oblivious to that fact. But I think even when it is something that can crush you, how you handle it is going to get you to the point where I am to where it doesn't crush you, if that makes sense. So for me, it was like, that stinks. We lost it. What am I going to do today to try to make back that money? What can I go sell? I'm going to do an extra couple lives, or I'm going to do this knowing, okay, what are we going to do? We can make it up. We can make up for it. So I think just being ready at all times to go, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Whenever our house burned down, um, it completely crushed me. Don't be confused. I was not sitting there like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? I 100% was devastated in a way that I had never been devastated before. The house fire happened on April 28th. I was in Florida with my sister Katie. We were on the first flight the next morning. The night of the fire, we had gone to a restaurant. We were sitting at the restaurant table, all excited in our cute clothes. We had done a PDA live, and I got a call from a fire department telling me that my house was on fire. And I was like, what? I thought I was being prank called, honestly. Because, and I've said this too. You think about being robbed, you think about all these things. I had never thought of a house. I really just hadn't. It was just not something I was afraid of. It was not something I was worried about. It's just such a random, I thought, rare thing that it comes to find out is really not. And so, anyways, all this happens. We end up back to the hotel. By the time we had gotten back to the hotel, I knew that we were losing everything and the whole house was going to be gone. And I remember just crawling in the bed and being devastated. But it's funny because as a mom, I think we immediately think of the kids and think of, what do I need to do? And I sat there and got on Amazon. I'm sitting here just kind of in shock and devastated, thinking I'm about to lose everything. And I immediately got on Amazon and I was ordering all the things that I know my kids need. They have sound machines, they had Serenoni blankets. Um, I immediately went on Amazon and just started ordering all of their bedtime things that they needed so that the next day they would have it. And I remember just sitting there sobbing because I knew I couldn't put my address in and I had to have it shipped to my best friend's house instead. And it's like every time something like that would happen, it just, and still, it will kind of hit and it's like, oh, and it could just take me down again, but I don't let it. And so the next morning we flew home, and for the next probably 2 to 5 days, I would say, those first 2 days I went to my in-laws. I just had to get out of the neighborhood. I got under the covers and I just let myself cry. I didn't think about what we were going to do. I didn't think about fixing it. I didn't think about making it better. So please hear me when I say I am not some superhero. When something really bad happens, I don't immediately in that same moment or that same day say, okay, change, pivot. No, I I allow myself the time to be sad or to be stressed or to deal with the emotion. But then I still know, okay, at some point you're going to have to, put your big girl pants on and figure out a way out of this. And so I allowed myself, that week, maybe even, where I was just devastated and I cried all the time. And I kept thinking and just listing the items that we lost. And I kept thinking of the christening outfits and the going home outfits and my wedding gown and my wedding video that we had never put on DVD. I loved that video. Um, all the little things, I just kept thinking of. And it devastated me. And I allowed myself that time to be devastated. And then it was like, okay, it's time to get back up, start ordering new things, start designing your new house, get back to work, figure out a way out of it. Because if you allow yourself to just sit there and focus on what went wrong, without thinking of how to pivot and adjust to that, you could do that forever. I could have sat there I could still sit around and cry if I wanted to and think about all those things. But guess what? Here we are, a year and 2 weeks later. April 28th was the year mark. Year and a couple weeks later, and our house is a couple months from being done. I'll never get those sentimental things back, but we have been able to go through and get some of the other things that we had. The kids, I remember being devastated about their loveys, their stuffed animals, and me thinking they're never going to get over this. They're kids. They adjusted. They got over it. If we could only be the way kids are, they are so resilient. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? They're okay now. They're fine. And so I think it's so nice to be able to look back, but I wish that we all could see that from the start, because looking back, it's like, yes, it was devastating. No, I won't get those things again. But hey, we're all here and we're alive. And now we have all this time to create new memories. And my kids can make me new Mother's Day cards. And no, I will not have their christening gown, but maybe I'll get to keep their graduation gown, And no, I won't have the first clip of their hair. But guess what? I can get a clip of their hair now if I need to, or, whatever the item might be. And so I think it's nice to be able to look back and go, everything's not going to work out the way that you want it to the first go, most often. And you could decide in that moment to stop, or you could decide, pivot, change, and let's figure out a way to get over the hill, get around the speed bump, whatever we need to do to make it work. So for me, that's been not so much positive thinking, but redirecting and thinking, okay, what do I need to do? How do I get over this? For me, a lot of times that's staying busy. It's working. It's finding the thing that does work so that I'm not focused on what doesn't. And it's a lot of change. As you know, in the last 17 years, you've seen a lot of things change at PDA. You've seen some things not change. If something works, I don't change it. But I do like to mix things up a bit. And I think we end up seeing a lot of success in that. This last few weeks, you'll notice that Kim and Katie have been going live at different times every day. I told them, switch up the amount of time you're live, switch up the amount of items you're selling. And guess what? They're having great success with that, because I think you guys get bored with things too. So I think in any business, whatever the model of your business might be, if you get to a point where maybe you're not seeing a lot of growth, whether it's financially or in some other way, but if you're not seeing that, then maybe look at, okay, am I doing the same thing and expecting a different result? And if so, what can I change? What can I either add in, or what maybe is it time to take away? Sometimes it's time to go, this isn't working. And so I'm not going to be too prideful and hold on to this. And I'm just going to realize this didn't work. This idea, it either worked for a while and now it's not, or it didn't work at all. Let's let it go and let's move on to the next thing. And y'all, I've had that happen so many times. There have been multiple things that I thought were going to be a crazy seller and they bombed, or something that I thought everybody would love and maybe they didn't, or maybe something I didn't think would hit at all and then it went off like crazy. So I think it's just be able to pay attention, be willing to change, be willing to adjust as necessary, and don't be too prideful to realize that we don't know everything, and that sometimes, especially in business, but in parenting, in life, it requires reflection and knowing when it's time to turn the corner and go in a new direction.
Hi, everybody. Happy birthday to us. Me.